among all the ads, almost half did not have humans in the ads. Predominantly white characters were featured in a third of the ads, and only 8% of the ads featured predominantly African American characters. Less than 20% of the ads showed more than one race equally. Zooming in on the types of foods and beverages associated with characters of different races, there was significant differences noted between ads featuring white characters and African American characters for 3 different product categories: breads and cereals, soft drinks, and sandwiches. So if you look at the table, this means that there were far more ads for breads and cereals with predominantly white characters than for African American characters, and that there were far more ads for soft drinks and sandwiches featuring predominantly African American characters rather than white characters. While this article does not report on gender representation, they did code for gender, and we will do so in a similar way as they did for racial composition. So, how did they do their coding? The researchers identified different codes that were applied to each of the ads, and they were looking specifically in this case for racial composition. So you'll notice that there's a 0 for an ad where there's no humans, because sometimes an ad just features the product. Then there's 1 through 4 for predominantly one race of characters in the ads. There's a 6 if there's more than one race is shown equally. And there's other, and then there's cannot code. So basically, for each commercial, you would indicate who the characters are by the prevalence of the people shown. So as an example, if you're coding these ads here, the ad for the Capri Sun, I would code as a 1. The ad for Lunchables, I would code as a 2. And the ad with Tony the Tiger, I would code that as a 6. And we'll do the same types of things for gender. Is this going to get tricky? Yes, particularly for race. There may be times when you just can't tell which race is being depicted, sorry, not predicted. There may be other times when you can tell that there's some type of race that's trying to be depicted that's non-white, but you just can't tell which one it is. And advertisers often do that. They're specifically ambiguous. So in these circumstances, you might code it as a 5. Also, if you note in the article, they were not able to classify any of the advertisements as featuring predominantly Hispanic characters. That raises a couple questions for me. Is it that there just weren't any Hispanic individuals associated with food in their sample? Or is it because it's hard to identify Hispanic just by the color of the skin? Good questions, and ones we'll tackle as we progress. Also, keep in mind that this is not intended to cast judgment or place value on race. It is simply a means to count if different races are represented in advertising and how often. And as we will find out, all studies have their limitations, especially when you're trying to put depictions into specific categories. We'll get into more details on how to do the coding in the next few weeks, and we'll discuss how to cope with some of these limitations as well. But I hope this gives you some insight into what can be learned from conducting content analyses and a hint of where we're going.